Welcome to the Point of Disorder Shorts. We're excited to have with us today Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from CD, or Congressional District 6, I should say. Welcome, Congresswoman. And can we call you Debbie?
I am a Debbie. I don't answer to Congresswoman. It's an honor to have the title, but I'm a Debbie.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
We're just going to get down to it, if that's okay, because we're so excited to have you here with us. You've worked across the aisle for years. Is there any aisle left right now when we have the government being led by somebody who's actively trying to overthrow democracy?
I want to say this. You can't give up hope. One of the things, I'm going off topic already, but I'm, out there talking, and now I'm really home and with a lot of different people, and they're asking me those kinds of questions. You got to have hope, and relationships matter. So I try to be respectful. I try to be civil, but I talk to everybody. And I do think there are aisles to work with that on issues that aren't, unfortunately, the big ones, like, are we going to rip healthcare away from people or people being hungry and our jobs? But they're bills that make a difference in people's lives. I've actually had a couple bills passed that have been bipartisan bills in the last few weeks, one of which I did with John Mulliner. I can tell you about it later if you want. I think you have to be willing to stand up when you think something's wrong, like I do, when I'm really worried about the state of democracy and the fact that we're losing our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion, freedom of media, due process. But I also think you got to keep talking to each other, keep listening to different perspectives, try to find common ground and never give up.
That must be tough.
It ain't easy.
Who do you have common ground with across the aisle that might surprise us?
This will really make you laugh, Chip Roy.
Okay.
Chip's office is right across from mine. And we probably don't agree on much, although we do talk about things in common, like how to reduce the deficit. And I went over to him one day. I was furious when they were playing some games on the floor and being disrespectful. So Yvette Clark and I we made a motion to adjourn that day. And I went over to Chip and said, Chip, I've learned from the best. We're trying to, I can't even remember what it was. Johnson was doing something on the budget that he wasn't like including people in. And I said, Chip, I'm learning from the best. Why aren't you joining and voting with us? I don't think anybody was very happy with us that day. But you learn to talk to each other. You're not going to agree with each other. But if you respect each other, you can get information. You can say, why are you voting this way?
Now, Chip is from Texas.
Yes, he is.
The Texas Democrats just fled the state to block the GOP redistricting plan. And Trump has threatened to have the FBI arrest them all.
Which he does not have authority to do.
That is not criminal behavior.
It's not criminal behavior.
Yeah.
What they are doing is protecting our democracy.
Right.
What Donald Trump is doing is he's afraid, and he should be afraid, because the big bad bill that we passed is really going to harm people's lives. People are going to die. And he knows that there are consequences that are going to be paid as people start to understand what was really in that bill and who is going to be hurt. Though I'm even going to say to you, people start to understand. There are people that understand it now. Last night, I was at an event, and a woman who has a child that has a disability just came up and started crying in my arms and begging me to do anything. What will I do to make sure her child's going to be okay? But I think more people are going to become aware of it. Donald Trump is worried that he's going to lose the House, which he should be worried. And if we as Democrats don't blow it, and we're capable of doing that, but that's why he is trying to redistrict in the middle of a 10-year period. And those Democrats are fleeing to protect our democracy and they're heroes.
So, Debbie, I think a lot about your late husband when I listen to you, and I'm sure you think about him a lot if he was here and to see what's actually happening
I would
to our
love
country.
to see his tweets right now.
We would follow him.
I don't think I'd even censor him.
At this point, no. But how do you keep fighting for Michigan when half of the House GOP is more interested in buying Greenland, and in some cases just getting drunk, than they are helping their constituents get access to healthcare and fair wages? How do you keep fighting?
You have to keep fighting because we're not going to buy Greenland. I've been so upset that more people haven't been upset about the health care that we're ripping away from 17 million Americans, or the Blue Cross Blue Shield is increasing its health care premiums by 18%. And more people aren't going to have access to affordable care if we don't pass the tax credit that goes along with that. When I look at the president fire somebody last Friday because they don't like the facts, those are facts. That means we really have truthfully lost freedom of speech. We got to be able to tell the truth and not be fearful. When you look at what's happening to the media, I've had friends that have quit institutions like the Washington Post because they were going to edit their column. When Stephen Colbert is fired so someone can get their FCC license renewed, you don't have freedom of press.
Right.
When at the State Department, career employees are being told that they need to report on non-Christian activity. Like, what does that say if you're a Muslim or a Jewish person of faith working at the State Department? That is not freedom of religion. And all of us have watched due process go right out the window in these last few months in more ways than anybody can imagine. I love my country. And, I admit when we learned about all those freedoms, I probably rolled my eyes and knew we had them and take them for granted. We can't take anything that we have for granted right now. And we have to keep fighting and we have to have hope. And that's what motivates me every single day.
On that, do you think that Democrats are doing enough to actually message to voters on all of this and giving responses, answers? Because I think that's really important. Or are we still doing it, let's all be polite and play nicely together? How do you think it's being handled?
I think that Democrats are getting stronger and better and more effective and unified. I think that when the big, beautiful shit piece of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I did.
You can.
Legislation that was just passed, when Hakeem spoke on the floor for 8 hours, that lifted Democrats across the country. It gave them energy. And he gave a lot of good reasons why the bill wasn't good. Hakeem and Leader Schumer have met. They have agreed they will be unified. We will not have room as we go into budget space between them. I myself have met with Ken Martin, that Ken Martin's going to be on the same page as we are. What we know is that Americans deserve better. We know that we've got to put more money in the pockets of Americans. We've got to talk about the economy and affordability. You hear that from everybody. We know that the healthcare system is broken and we've got to address it. We know that we have to address corruption and, probably start by stopping stock trading among members of Congress. But I keep telling Hakeem and Senator Schumer, hey, when I'm out there, people really want to see the Supreme Court cleaned up. I think we're getting our messaging better. We want to own August, talking about what this bill is going to do to people. The 60th anniversary of Medicaid was last week. Tomorrow, we're going to be celebrating veterans and really telling the story of veterans and highlighting on them. The 90th anniversary of Social Security is on the 14th. And by the way, anybody who thinks that Donald Trump stopped taxing Social Security is believing the lies. He did not stop taxing Social Security. They had, with an adjusted income, there is a tax credit for some seniors. And by the way, the billionaire's tax cut is permanent. And that minor senior no tax, which isn't on it's not a Social Security, removing Social Security tax. It's a tax credit for some seniors with adjusted income, lasts for 3 years. Then we also are going to be doing weeks of actions on the cost of living, and we're going to be talking, we got to get back in the union halls and talk to working men and women and celebrating Labor Day. We have a month of action and are united in trying to really be out there talking to people and being effective in message delivery. And hopefully you're going to tell us we did a good job.
Last night I was in Grand Rapids, had about 50 people in the room of all ages, from like 17 to 80, 90 years old. I was there speaking to this group of, a very diverse group of people. And it was so interesting. After I spoke and I was speaking about ballot petitions that we're going to be working on, et cetera, I was stunned at how many people came up to me and said, I just needed to hear hope. I just needed to hear from somebody that was talking in a positive way about how we as people and residents and citizens of this country can actually make a difference. And I was like, it touched me, and it speaks to, I think you need to take that message back to DC and say, guys, there are people sitting out there waiting and are so scared and depressed right now about what is going on. They need to hear from Democrats about a positive message and a way to move forward. And I just think that's so important.
They do deserve better, but I want to say people do need hope. And people say, well, it's not making a difference. It is making a difference. And it's the collective we. Mm-hmm. We can't do it, one of us. It's the collective we that keeps raising our voices, says it's not okay, is prepared to stand up. When you were asking me about being civil, or whatever language you used a minute ago, I thought of a town hall that I was at, and a guy got up and said to me, enough of this civility stuff. He said, are you prepared for violence? And okay, that's a tricky question. And I looked at him and said, well, I was raised by the nuns. And they did teach me to be civility and have a responsibility to the community and to listen to each other. But they also taught me to be tough and not to
take shit.
Well, yeah, that was not the word I used at that, but that's a safer word to use right now. Not to take any shit. And I don't want to become them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think anybody thinks that I'm not tough and I'm not afraid to stand up.
One of the things you're standing up for that I love is Medicare for all. You're one of the few in Congress really pushing for this. You're a co-sponsor of...
I'm the lead.
The lead, okay.
I'm the lead.
Of the Medicare for All 2025 bill. What is it like fighting for universal health care in a system that really does just cater to big pharma and private insurance companies?
I mean, it's easy for me because I just believe that if you live in this country, when you're sick, you should be able to go to the doctor, go to get the medicine that you need, get the treatment you need, and that's it, period. And the fact of the matter is that we spend twice as much as any other industrialized nation in the world on healthcare, and we have half the outcomes.
Right.
We have 50%
We spend more, people die sooner.
It's outrageous. And so it's very easy for me to fight for, and quite frankly, my husband fought for it. And I am my own person, and I'm very proud of my family's legacy, but I have to get up every day and go out and deliver for the people that represent me. Mm-hmm. Having said that, my father-in-law was the first person to introduce universal health care in 1944. John kept that tradition on. The day he died, I promised I was going to get this over the finish line. And his father, most people don't know this, was sent west to die of tuberculosis because there was nobody to take care of him. And he ultimately did die. I mean, he went on, was elected to Congress, served, died of lung issues. I just see the inequities every single day. When John got older and was having issues, I would just take my head and pound it against the wall. And it's me. I'm luckier than 99 and 9/10 of the people in this country. And, you get tired of punching numbers and talking to computers and getting nobody to be able to help you. And even talking to my colleagues now who really do want to fix a broken healthcare system, they don't understand that it is money, but you also can't get doctor's appointments and you don't have enough doctors. And this whole system we have is totally broken, and then you can't afford your medicine.
Right.
So it's really easy for me to keep this fight up, and I'm not going to fight. But I think it is becoming so frustrating to people that there are conservatives I know who are like, people need to be able to go to the doctor. And they try to use these horror stories or tell you what the backlog is. You're not going to be able to go to the doctor. Look, we need to transform our healthcare system. And I want to, and people shouldn't give up hope on this. Medicare was passed in 1965. I don't think anybody envisioned that we'd have a president that was going to try to take us backwards, Medicaid that time too. Then we got the CHIPS program. Then we got the Affordable Care Program, which got more people insured in this country than have ever been insured. And we do have people, we have a presidency, we have people that want to take us backwards. They never liked the Affordable Care Act. Why should somebody not be able to get the health care that they need when they need it?
Yeah.
People are dying. And not going to stop fighting for it. We got to build that coalition, and we just have to make it happen.
Speaking of coalition, which Michigan Dems have signed on to that with you?
I know Rashida has.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else is on, but Rashida would always be there with me.
Why can't we get every Dem to co-sponsor? I feel like fair wages and health care for all should be the cornerstone of the Democratic.
And I don't know, by the way, I got to go check and see if any of the others
I
are on.
checked. They didn't.
Okay, I wasn't wrong. Hope springs eternal.
But why? I mean, it's just such an easy win. I'm somebody who has a chronic autoimmune disorder. Okay, so if I didn't have good health care, I would have no quality of life. I need a doctor's appointment. I call my doctor's office. I don't get in the same month generally unless I'm having an emergency. So this misnomer of, you'll never be able to get an appointment, it's kind of how it is right now.
Yeah, it is. First of all, let me again say I know I'm luckier than 99 and 9/10 of the people in this country. So, but I, in January, have a day I set aside to make my appointments. I can't get my dermatology appointment for 12 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the,
right.
And I don't need it. I mean, I need it. I need the skin check. But it's very, and by the way, we've got we have a doctor's crisis. Another thing that was in this, I'm going to call it the big shitty bill, that was in it is that we capped tuition. We are not getting young people who are going into medicine because they can't afford to go into medicine, which is going to contribute to the already shortage of doctors that we have, which is going to be one more problem that we have.
I don't know if you know this, but when they removed the DEI stuff, medical schools heavily rely on DEI programs to fill rural communities. So if you're from a certain county, it doesn't matter what color your skin is or what your religion is. You actually get an advanced placement because they're hoping, when you go to do your match, that you'll go back and work where you're from. So that's just another way that this administration is fucking over healthcare for people in rural communities. But it's insane.
And I think, take a look, I think what we need to emphasize here, and you've alluded to this, Debbie, in our conversation, but clearly a majority of people are moving towards supporting Medicare for all.
Yes.
I think they know that the healthcare system is broken and that they may not like the words. I think we got to find another word. Medicare for all has been it's communism, which it's not, by the way. I mean, we are the only industrialized nation in the world, for all of you who are listening, that does not have a system that everyone could go to the doctor when they want to go to, and that they can afford it. We are the only industrialized nation in the world. And for those that believe in the free market system, we in this country have to pay those healthcare costs that other countries don't have to pay in the global marketplace because of the way that their medicine, their healthcare system is set up. So it's a competitive issue for us in the global marketplace too.
Did you see your Republican colleague's town hall, Mike Flood?
I watched a little bit of it.
Okay. Did you see the reaction to him telling people you don't get free health care? And then when he goes on to give an example of a hypothetical 28-year-old who wasn't working, and he said, should this man get health care? And they all screamed yes. Now, if we have a room full of people in Nebraska screaming yes to universal health care, I mean, what does that tell us? Like, do we feel like the party is a little behind the times in accepting this policy?
That's why I say to you, I feel it moving out there. I know that people think that when you're sick, you should be able to. You know, I have a couple stories here. One, we passed this big, wonderful bill on a Thursday, and got a call on Friday that my mother was being taken to the hospital by ambulance. So I raced there, and she's okay now. She's 91, but had pneumonia and needed to be admitted to the hospital. And I found myself sitting in the emergency room for the weekend because she was there with 20 other people that needed to be admitted to the hospital, and there was no bed. And all I could do sitting there was, the healthcare system is broken, and we just made it worse. And what's also going to happen is as people lose their insurance, they lose their Medicaid, they can't afford to go to the marketplace and buy insurance, they're going to wait till they are sicker and sicker and sicker, and then go to the emergency room, which is going to make emergency rooms even more crowded.
Right.
And cost more.
And
the
cost
reality
more.
is that I come from a country that has universal health care, and so much of the benefit and the reduction of cost comes from preventative medicine. It's so bloody
and then
simple.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we're doing to vaccines. And you've seen when people aren't getting preventative medicine, when they aren't getting their vaccines, you see an increase of flus. Are you going to start to see COVID come back? You've seen what's happened with measles. We haven't had the epidemic of measles the way that we've seen. And so more people get sick. There are more communicable diseases. So it's not a good place. So I'm hoping that more people really understand that we got a broken healthcare system and people can't afford their medicine. That's just one more issue that's major. I actually, don't dive shock here, agree with Donald Trump on one of the issues on pharmaceuticals. And he did an executive order last Friday, that says that nobody in this country should pay more for their medicine than, it's the MFN treaty, than other countries do for pharmaceutical.
Wow.
So I agree with that. But just for the record, was up all night in committee. I spent 7 all-nighters as we were doing this big shitty bill. And we did way too early that next Thursday morning. And they showed a clip of President Trump. They didn't even know. MSNBC didn't even know this wasn't true. Had talked about how great this bill was and how it was going to lower the cost of prescriptions because this proposal was in it. And I said, no, it's not. I'm the one that offered it in committee. And every single Republican voted against it. So it's not in the bill. And I don't think that Donald Trump even knew it then. Then I offered it in rules, tried to get it on the floor for the main bill. Every single Republican voted against it. So I he put out an executive order last Friday, praised him for it, and I'm introducing legislation to try to, let's put into...
You love it so much, here it is.
But I don't, it actually is something that he's right about, hard to believe, that people shouldn't be paying more for a prescription. And they've got all these reasons about, we're paying for the research that these people are benefiting from. We as Americans should be getting the benefit of that investment in the research.
Absolutely. And the reason that a lot of other countries have that, because we have it in Australia, basically is because We have universal healthcare, which means when you're negotiating on behalf of an entire country, not just,
Correct.
one provider. Okay, so now we all agree, we've had a long conversation about Medicare for All. We all agree it's absolutely necessary. What is your message to Democrats who say that Medicare for All is too hard or too much change and people aren't ready for it? What's your message?
That American people want to be able to go to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor and afford the medicine that they need, and we need to figure it out.
It really is that simple. So when I hear, other elected officials coming so close to advocating for it, but just stopping at this like single payer or we need a private option, I just want to be like, you're just so missing the point.
I don't like talking about I'm proud of my family, but I don't normally talk about it because I have to earn. I got elected on my own. My husband was not allowed to campaign with me, which hurt him terribly. And I'm out there every day trying to deliver for the people, but that I represent. My father-in-law was one of the authors of Social Security. Got, by the way, at the time, called a communist and a socialist over that. Introduced universal health care in 1944. Got called a communist and a socialist. I've been doing a lot of research for the last few weeks on what those times were and what the bills were. FDR in 1944 had a campaign theme on all of this and an economic rights platform for people to be able to live without being sick, to make a fair wage, and et cetera. We need to look at that again, and we need to be learning from it. But people become afraid of the label communist or socialist. I don't think as of Australia or Britain or Norway or many of these other countries that have, France, I could go through a whole list of industrial nations that have it, and they're not communist countries. And we let labels intimidate us and scare us, and we need to talk in very practical terms. And if you're someone who has been sick or has a child that is sick, or you need help, or you've been a diabetic and can't afford your insulin, have had cancer, I could go through a million things. You need a system that is pragmatic and practical, not communistic. You can get the health care you need when you need it.
Let's talk about Trump for a second. He's, funded ICE beyond what most industrialized countries spend on their military, slashed the Medicaid. The Supreme Court rulings seem to go unchecked. What is it that Congress can do to shield vulnerable communities in Michigan and across the country? Are there any real checks and balances left in place?
Well, let me say that while there's some Supreme Court cases that I have not loved, I have to check the figure, but we've won 92% of the court cases. You have to remember that.
That's good to know because the bad rulings are the ones that kind of break through online, and that's what we hear about.
What I'm watching, and there's some real surprises on the Supreme Court too, and how certain people are voting. And even the cases that I'm very unhappy with have not been precedent-setting cases for the most part. They're not letting what one district court is doing impact the whole country while they're in the process of studying the whole issue. I will lose any sense of hope in our system of check and balances depending upon what the Supreme Court does on birthright. We will know that we no longer have a judiciary that's following the Constitution. But I have hope that they're going to do the right thing. Congress has to fight every single day, and that's what we've got to do. We got to be part of it isn't one of us. It is all of us. It is that collective we. We have to insist upon due process. And quite frankly, right now, we got to count on the courts to be trying to ensure that people have due process. And we are really seeing people who do not have due process. And people are being denied due process, and it's very concerning.
Yeah, we just had a case here in Detroit just this week people from Southeast Asia were sent letters saying, hey, come down. We need to have a hearing or a meeting. So these people in good faith went down to the immigration office, and ICE was there waiting for them. And these are people who came here illegally through asylum claims and are now being sent to countries that they've never lived in.
Some of them had their attorneys with them.
Yeah.
They were literally there with their attorneys, and they just, bye, see you later.
What would you say to voters in Michigan who are still flirting with Trumpism, even as he's gutting their health care and weaponizing government against these people? And they're losing their jobs because of the tariffs, but they're still hanging on to this, to their red hats. What do we say to these people?
Well, for starters, as Democrats, we need to understand what we're not doing. Why are they supporting Donald Trump? And I think that for a long time, we didn't. I think the reason Donald Trump won in 2016 was trade. NAFTA was one of the worst trade policies we had seen in the history of this country. And many, especially in our community in Michigan, had seen their jobs shipped overseas. They'd gone to Mexico. They had lost their jobs. We have communities that have been devastated in Michigan because of bad trade policy. I think that there are people here in Michigan, and we need to understand that think that Democrats don't care about them, that they're not young white men, think that Democrats don't care about them, they're going to be discriminated against. We had people in the past that felt discriminated against. We need an inclusive community, an inclusive society where everybody has equal opportunity. And that's what we've got to really work toward. And there are people that are really having a hard time finding jobs, being able to afford. Look, food was expensive. Housing's expensive. It was expensive when people voted for Joe Biden or while he was president, but it's more expensive now. Food prices aren't coming down. Housing is not coming down. People deserve to have more money in their pocket, and we have to be working towards making that happen. We need to make sure everybody's being paid a fair wage. But quite frankly, I think Democrats forgot how to talk to working men and women. I've said that. I told you at the beginning of this, I knew that Hillary was going to lose in 2016 because I was in those union halls. And I think Donald Trump, I don't agree with him, but he knows how to talk to people. He understands their fears, their anxieties. He makes them promises that probably doesn't deliver on. And Democrats need to do a far better job of listening to what people care about, what they're worried about, and we got to deliver for working men and women.
So, Debbie, I feel like you've been ringing that alarm bell for years. I remember the night before the election in 2016 watching you on TV, and I was almost throwing things at the television.
Trust me, everybody wanted to kill me.
I was like, no, you're fucking kidding me. How can you say that? At any rate, here we are. So I want to just shout out that you've been saying it for a long time. But I think we have to be honest, because we've witnessed this, even here in Michigan from a state perspective, in the lame duck in the beginning of this year and the end of last year, even almost that last year that we held the House in Michigan, that the issues that matter most to Michigan people were being ignored. And I think a lot of that comes down to the influence of corporate donors. There is we all know about Citizens United, but there is a huge, they tend to, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm happy to have this debate with you, but it seems to me that the money in politics that come from corporations seem to sort of have so much more power than what, individual voters or, the rest of us have. And that seems to be the case even though we are edging towards an authoritarian state. So can you just speak to that for a minute?
I think we need transparency. I'm going to start there. with how much, and we have a very real lack of transparency. I think I would almost push back. Look, this DTE, I don't know that DTE drove the agenda. Autos aren't really winning in any corner right now. I mean, the auto industry is really a political ping pong ball between parties, who's ever in. I think billionaires, I think money in politics does drive agendas. And, you saw, quite frankly, just the threatening by, look at what Elon Musk did. I mean, but it wasn't corporate money, it was billionaires' money. And when we reached at the end of last year a bipartisan agreement on the budget, and Musk took one look at it and threatened to primary anybody who voted for it, the whole budget deal blew up. That's not okay. I was so happy he wasted all the money in Wisconsin on trying to impact the Supreme Court race and lost. And but I even look at, we've needed bipartisan immigration reform. We've needed immigration reform through Republican presidents and Democratic presidents and have never been able to get there. We had a bipartisan immigration agreement in the Senate last year, led by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, and Donald Trump didn't want to give the Democrats a win and blew it up and threatened to, put money. So I actually think the billionaires' money is more, I don't think corporations have limits on what they can spend. We don't know what they're putting into PACs. And again, that gets to the transparency.
Issue.
Yeah.
And we do need to know what they're spending. But, I mean, we got people like Musk actually threatening, saying that he's going to do it. So I worry about that. We don't know what happened at the end of the Michigan State Legislature. It was a disaster at the end of last year. But I don't know that it was total money driving. I can't tell where the dysfunction was there. I can tell you where the dysfunction is in my institution, but it's, I can't. I mean, and quite frankly, the dysfunction right now is really being driven by billionaires to some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, the corporate interests, I think a lot of corporations right now at the federal level feel like, I mean, I know it for the auto industry. I watch them. They're a political ping pong ball. Yeah. They're just a total political ping pong ball. And everybody's so afraid to speak up or speak out because they're if you say anything, you're going to get a target on your back and you're going to be hurt. It's one of the things I want to make this observation here in this state. There are groups that need help. There are people that I'm always trying to help, and they don't want to speak. They don't want to tell you that there's a problem. I'm going to give you an example. I was the 60th anniversary of Head Start. I was at a birthday party in Detroit, actually, for it. And at the end of this presentation, someone slipped in that they were going to have to start to lay off people and programs were going to be shut down if they didn't get something in a week. And I'm like, whoa, stop. We've got it. And they didn't want to talk about it. They were afraid to talk about it. And it turned out to be, there are a number of funding organizations that fund a number of them. There are probably 60 Head Start programs that would have been impacted. And they were afraid to talk to me because they were afraid that they were going to get a target on them. And I looked at them and said, I'm not going to put it, I know how to do this. I don't put a target on your back. I know how to go in and try to solve a problem. And, I got on it immediately and called HHS. They're reasonable people inside this administration, too, that you can. And to make a long story short, I found the right person. I called, I did call Rashida on that. So we were trying to find out all the programs because everybody was going to be. But there are people like me who know how, you got to give us a heads up. You have to tell us something's going to happen. And we know how to try to work on issues, understand issues without putting a target on an individual organization's back.
It's frightening that people are scared to even come
People
out.
are very scared.
And I think that's
And it's real.
Yeah.
I want to say that. And the corporate community is scared to death.
Yeah.
This is, he's got a whole lot of tools and he's not afraid to use them.
A sad state of affairs
Very.
right now when people feel legitimate fear if they speak out against anyone or
And that
anything.
fear is real.
Speaking of fear, I'm going to ask you something that a lot of elected officials are afraid to talk about. And that is, of course, on the topic of what's happening overseas in Gaza. What's your message to Arab and Muslim Americans in Michigan and their allies who kind of feel abandoned by both parties on Gaza and foreign policy?
I called for a ceasefire early on last year. I never was said enough for anybody, I guess, in some ways, but I'm going to do what I think is right. And right now, the United States of America's got a moral responsibility to help with the world feed those children. We are creating another generation of hatred towards our country by just what has happened in Palestine. And when mothers and children who are starving, they're starving, that hunger that we can't imagine, are told that if they go to a site, there will be food and get shot upon and killed. How anyone can think that that is morally okay, it's not. And yet I also want to say that, and people get said, why do you always have to say anti-Semitism is wrong? And we've got to work up against hate, and Islamophobia is wrong. What we all have a moral responsibility to do is to stand up to hate whenever and wherever we see it. And we're seeing more hate in this world, too.
We're going to lighten things up for a minute or two here because
Yes.
this has been a heavy conversation. We're going to do a quick lightning round of some more fun things, Debbie, because you're the hype girl that we always know that we wanted in terms of seeing you at rallies. So we love.
I don't know if you know this, but when the UAW had their big rally right here, in downtown, and they were on strike, we had that big event where Sean Fain came out, Bernie Sanders came. You were up on stage dancing, just getting the crowd ready to go. I got a great video of it and posted it on Twitter, and it went absolutely viral.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it was Julie was quoting it. Debbie Dingell is the hype woman you never knew you needed.
We need more of
Yes,
dancing Debbie Dingell.
yes.
But on that, if Congress had a karaoke night, what would be your go-to song?
Well, the song I sing to the media when I leave is I'm going home, I've done my time. But we got to think of some fun songs. I don't know. Now, that's a hard song. I don't know.
Sweet Caroline, maybe.
Sweet Caroline. I was at something last week and they played like a bridge. This great chorus, like a bridge over troubled waters.
Can't go wrong with Simon
That's a
and
good
Garfunkel.
one. That's a good one. Yeah, Simon and Garfunkel. That's a good one. We'll have to we might do carpool karaoke or something.
That'd be good. Or you just call out my name.
All right. What's your secret junk food or guilty pleasure snack during late night markups?
Okay, I am a junk food queen. I
Okay.
just want to say that. So any junk food passes. But, a chocolate milkshake, French fries,
Yeah.
fried pickles.
I feel like you're after my own heart here,
Yeah.
Debbie.
I don't eat. I'll tell you the truth. I don't eat healthy.
Yeah. No, I like an ice cold Coke and French fries. It's
I'm a
like,
Diet Coke queen.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. It's, summer season, the carnivals, an elephant ear.
yeah. I love it.
Delicious. All right. What's one thing in your office that would surprise people?
I collect nutcrackers.
Okay. Expand. Nutcrackers, as in the dancers, like little or
I have a ton of patriotic
Christmas-
nutcrackers, and I have a big nutcracker in the corner of my office.
That's fun.
And then if you go to my house, I now have a lot of nutcrackers. I started patriotic. Most of them are patriotic.
I have a lot of them too, actually. Yeah, I've
even
got
know
like
that
tall
about
ones
you.
for Christmas, like big ones. Yeah.
I keep them out full year round.
Hanging on to that spirit.
I do leave mine in the basement. Like they're not like away because I do enjoy looking at them. Okay, you get to sit down with any historical woman in politics for a day and just have lunch, ask them questions, no cameras around. What would you talk about? And who would it be with?
Eleanor Roosevelt, who I think did more for women than anyone will
Yeah.
ever know, and cared about so many different issues. And, I was a spouse for a long time, and she was a very strong woman who wasn't liked at the time by a lot of people, but that didn't matter to her. And she really tried to help a whole lot of people and do good.
I love that. I do love that. Okay, if you could give one piece of advice to young women thinking about running for office, what would it be?
Don't get a poli-sci degree.
That's my degree.
But find your passion,
Yeah.
pursue your passion, become involved in that passion, and then network with others who share it, build that, become involved, become engaged in the community.
Good old grassroots way.
We cannot thank you enough, Debbie, first of all, for what you do. Second of all, for being our hype girl. And third of all, for coming to join us today. We
Yes.
were really excited to have you here.
Well, I hope I didn't get in too much trouble. I'm just thrilled to be with both of you and to just talk, really talk.
And I think people are going to be excited to hear this conversation. So
Yeah,
thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And for being the champion of healthcare the way you are.
Absolutely.
It matters.
And a reminder to everybody, you're listening to the Point of Disorder Short, and please follow us on Point of Disorder on all of your favorite social medias. Give us a like, give us a review. Please, please, please share us to those that you think that might be interested, and enjoy a little bit of gossip mixed in with your politics. Bye.
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 And that's a wrap on today's episode of Point of Disorder. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to everyone who listened today. And if you like us, give us a like, a subscribe, or a review on any place you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Distill Social and at The Guerrilla Politic. This is the Point of Disorder podcast, signing off. Stay sharp, stay progressive, and above all, stay tuned.